This is not a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. This is not. This is actually James Thurber. And this is 2013. James Thurber is not in the public domain. This is me drunk as hell in my apartment. If Grant had been drinking at Apomattox. Note. Scribner's magazine published a series of 3 articles. If Booth had missed Lincoln, if Lee had not won the Battle of Gettysburg, and if Napoleon had escaped to America. This is the 4th. If Grant had been drinking at Appomattox, by James Thurber. The morning of the 9th of April, 1865, dawned beautifully. General Meade was up with the first streaks of crimson in the eastern sky. General Hooker and the General Burnside were up and breakfasted by 8:15. The day continued beautiful. It drew on towards 11 o'clock. General Ulysses S. Grant was still not up. He was asleep in his famous old Navy hammock, swung high above the floor of his headquarters bedroom. Headquarters was distressingly disarranged. Papers were strewn all on the floor. Confidential notes from spies scurried here and there in the breeze from an open window. The dregs of an overturned bottle of wine flowed pinkly across important military maps. Corporal Schultz of the 65th Ohio Voluntary Infantry, aide to General Grant, came to the outer room, looked around him, and sighed. He entered the bedroom and shook the general's hammock roughly. General Ulysses S. Grant opened one eye. "Pardon, sir," said Corporal Schultz, "but this is the day of surrender. You ought to be up, sir." "Don't swing me," said Grant sharply, for his aide was making the hammock swing gently. "I feel terrible," he added, and he turned over and closed his eye again. "General Lee will be here any minute now," said Corporal firmly, swinging the hammock again. "Will you cut that out?" roared Grant. "Do you want to make me sick or what?" Schultz clicked his heels and saluted. "What's he coming here for?" asked the general. "This is the day of surrender, sir," said Schultz. Grant grunted bitterly. 350 generals in the northern armies, said Grant, and he has to come to me about this? What time is it? You're commander-in-chief, that's why, said Corporal Schultz. It's 11:25, sir. Don't be crazy, said Grant. Lincoln is the commander-in-chief. Nobody in the history of the world ever surrendered before lunch. Doesn't he know that any army surrenders on its stomach? He pulled a blanket up over his head and settled himself again. The generals of the Confederacy will be here any minute now, said the corporal. You ought to be up, sir. Grant stretched his arms above his head and yawned. All right, he said. He rose to a sitting position and stared about the room. This place looks awful, he growled. Must have had quite a time last night, sir, ventured Schultz. Yeah, said General Grant, looking around for his clothes. I was wrastling some general with a beard. Schultz helped the commander of the northern armies in the field find his clothes. Where's my other sock? Demanded Grant. Schultz began to look around for it. The general walked uncertainly to a table and poured a drink from a bottle. I don't think it wise to drink, sir, said Schultz. Never mind about me, said Grant, helping himself to a second. I can take it or let it alone. Did you ever hear the story about a fellow went to Lincoln to complain about me drinking too much? So-and-so says Grant's drinks too much, says fella. And says, so-and-so is a fool, said Lincoln. So this fellow went to what's-his-name and told him that Lincoln said he came roaring to Lincoln about it. Did you tell so-and-so I was a fool? He said. No, said Lincoln. I thought he knew it. The general smiled reminiscently and had another drink. That's how I stand with Lincoln, he said, proudly. The soft thudding sound of horses' hooves came through the open window. Schultz hurriedly walked across and looked out. Hoof steps, said Grant, with curious chortle. It is General Lee and his staff, said Schultz. Show 'em in, said the general, taking another drink, and see what the boys in the back room will have. Schultz walked smartly over to the door, opened it, saluted, and stood aside. General Lee, dignified against the blue of the April sky, magnificent in his dress uniform, stood for a moment, framed in the doorway. He walked in, followed by his staff. They bowed and stood silent. General Grant stared at them. He only had one boot on, and his jacket was unbuttoned. "I know who you are," said Grant. "You're Robert Browning, the poet." "This is General Robert E. Lee," said one of his staff, coldly. "Oh," said Grant. "I thought he was Robert Browning. He certainly looks like Robert Browning. There was a poet for you. News from Ghent to A? Up Derrick to Saddle, to up Derrick away, up Dunder, up Blitzen, up Prancer, up Dancer, up Bouncer, up Vixen, up... "Shall we proceed at once with the matter at hand?" asked General Lee, his eyes disdainfully taking in the disordered room. "Some of the boys was wrastling here last night," explained Grant. "I threw Sherman, or some general who looked a lot like Sherman. It was pretty dark." He handed a bottle of scotch to the commanding officer of the Southern armies, who stood holding it in amazement and discomfiture. "Get a glass, somebody," said Grant, looking straight at General Longstreet. "Didn't I meet you at Cold Harbor?" he asked. General Longstreet didn't answer. I should like to have this over with as soon as possible," said Lee. Grant looked vaguely at Schultz, who walked up close to him, frowning. "The surrender, sir?" "The surrender," said Corporal Schultz in a whisper. "Oh, sure," said Grant. He took another drink. "All right," he said. "Here we go." Slowly, sadly, he unbuckled his sword. Then he handed it to the astonished Lee. "There you are, General," said Grant. "We damn near licked you. If I'd been feeling better, we would have licked you."